Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip quietly into a world that looks calm on the outside. But trust me, it's got more drama than your favorite streaming show. Picture a Victorian bedroom, polished wood shining in the candlelight, lace curtains falling like a perfect Instagram filter, and everything arranged to whisper respectability. But just wait. What's hidden behind those curtains could give any modern soap opera writer a nervous breakdown. You're about to find out, and honestly, you wouldn't last a night in that bed without wondering who else has secrets stitched into the sheets. You think you could handle it, but really you wouldn't survive long here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. Nothing makes me happier than knowing someone drifted off to sleep, with my stories playing in the background now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The curtains sway just slightly, as though the room itself is breathing. You're standing in the middle of a bedroom that would impress any guest, with its heavy mahogany bed carved so meticulously you'd think the craftsman was paid per curl and flourish. There's a faint smell of lavender sachets stuffed into drawers. The Victorian version of an air freshener, though unlike your plug-in diffuser, these actually doubled as moth repellents. Beneath that floral calm, though, lies a silence that feels almost rehearsed. Like the people who lived here were trying too hard to convince you nothing scandalous ever happened within these walls. Spoiler, it did. You noticed the wallpaper. It looks harmless, pale with delicate patterns, but did you know some of that wallpaper was laced with arsenic-based dyes? People genuinely thought green arsenic pigment was chic. So while Victorians tried to cover their walls with beauty, they were literally poisoning themselves. Today you might complain about toxic paint fumes, but imagine your decoration actively plotting your demise every time you leaned back to admire it. And then, the bed. You glance at it, draped in fabrics so thick they might survive a minor flood. But here's the kicker. Under those covers, many couples didn't even share the warmth. Despite being married, some Victorians slept in separate beds placed side by side, a kind of together but not together arrangement. Modern couples complain when their partner steals the blanket. Imagine being grateful just to have your own mattress, never mind the distance that screamed. Romance has left the chat. Historians still argue whether this was about hygiene, prudishness, or just an excuse to finally get a good night's sleep without someone snoring in your ear. You lean closer to the dressing table. It glimmers with hairbrushes, perfume bottles, a small jar of cream with questionable ingredients, lard, rosewater, maybe a dash of lead if you're unlucky. People genuinely smeared lead-based concoctions onto their faces, thinking it would make them glow. Spoiler, it did, just not in the healthy way. So, if you've ever rolled your eyes at someone spending a fortune on anti-aging serums today, remember, at least those products don't slowly turn you into a marble statue. The curtains again catch your eye. Their purpose wasn't just to soften the light or look pretty. Curtains were strategic, like silent bodyguards of family reputation. They blocked noise, they blurred outlines, they let the outside world see only elegance while inside. Things could get complicated. A fight hushed, a lover's secret meeting, or maybe just someone sneaking extra brandy under the guise of medicinal use. If the walls could talk, they'd need a full-time censor. But what strikes you most isn't the objects, it's the atmosphere. There's this sense that everything in the Victorian bedroom is curated, as if you're walking through a museum exhibit where the labels have been deliberately misplaced. The grand canopy bed, the spotless drapery, the impeccable carpets they all say respect, yet behind them lingers a whisper. Don't believe everything you see. It's the 19th century version of editing your photos before posting them online. You scroll through social media and think, wow, they've got it all together. Victorians did the same. Except their filters were curtains and bedspreads. And you, standing here, you can almost hear the echoes of a whispered argument that never made it to the dinner table. The clash of duty and desire, of wealth and ruin, of health and sickness, all tucked away like clutter, hidden before unexpected guests arrive. It's almost funny, isn't it, that even in a time obsessed with manners and morality, the most telling stories happened not in the grand parlors, but in bedrooms behind curtains. The same way today, the most interesting group chats aren't the ones everyone's in, but the private ones where secrets actually live. So you stand there, letting your eyes drift across every polished surface, every heavy fold of fabric, every perfect placement of furniture, and in the silence, the room almost dares you to believe in its perfection. But you know better. You've pulled back the curtain once, and there's no pretending it's just lace and wood anymore, as the candlelight flickers and the shadows stretch across the room. You begin to notice the faint creaks and rustles that the polished floorboards try so desperately to hide. It's that subtle hum of life that thrives when everyone else is pretending to sleep. You tiptoe closer to the corner where the wardrobe meets the wall, and suddenly you're privy to secrets that, in daylight, would be neatly tucked under polite conversation. In the Victorian bedroom, night wasn't just for rest, it was the stage for private rituals, clandestine habits, and whispers no one dared repeat. And yes, you wouldn't survive a week here without realizing just how strange normal used to be. There's the governess, tiptoeing with a tray of chamomile tea, not because the children requested it, but because she secretly liked the warmth of her own little indulgence. Or perhaps it's a lady of the house, quietly adjusting her corset in the dim glow, humming softly to herself. Today we might chuckle at someone slipping into pajamas, grabbing a cup of hot cocoa, and scrolling through their phone in the dark. Back then, the phone was gossip, and the screen was a set of tightly drawn curtains concealing more than just candlelight. And yet, in both eras, the thrill of the secret, tiny, mischievous human remains the same. You hear muffled giggles coming from behind the heavy drapery. It's a servant passing a note to the young master of the house, a whispered joke about the butler's new wig or the maid's secret crush. Historians still debate how widespread such nocturnal mischief truly was. Some argue that Victorian households were strictly regimented, with no room for play after dusk. Others suggest that what was whispered behind closed doors was the only real life anyone lived. A tiny rebellion against the rigid expectations of the day. Imagine your own office, where everyone's professional during business hours, and then picture the chaos of night. Emails replaced with secrets, confessions, and whispered laughter. That's essentially what a Victorian bedroom felt like. And then there's the strange habit of sleepwalking, or at least what they called it. Some nights, you'd witness a young lady wander to the window, peering through the lace curtains, half asleep, half dreaming, muttering words she couldn't quite remember in the morning. Today, we might think of it as charmingly odd, maybe even meme-worthy. But back then, people genuinely feared it could signal possession, illness, or a moral failing. The line between superstition and observation was thin, just as we now debate whether a new wellness trend is science or nonsense. Victorians quietly argued over whether nocturnal murmurs were medical mysteries or moral lessons. And you, standing there, can't help but grin at the echoes of human curiosity that never changed, then or now. You catch a faint scent of lavender again, mingled with beeswax and candle smoke. A husband tiptoes across the floor, carrying his evening writing desk, scribbling letters he'll never send, full of confessions that could ruin reputations if discovered. You might think of email drafts saved and deleted in the middle of the night today, but in the Victorian era, each letter was a risk, a delicate dance of secrecy and courage. And it wasn't always romantic. Some messages were warnings, some negotiations, some complaints about dinner raw, about the scullery maid's inexplicable disappearance of sugar cubes. These small dramas, seemingly trivial, were the threads that held private life together, woven tightly behind the velvet drapes of silence. You peek at the wardrobe, imagining it might conceal more than clothes. And indeed, sometimes it did. Hidden diaries, love letters, medicinal bottles, perhaps even a small flask of brandy. Did they sip it discreetly to fight off the night chill, or because life's disappointments demanded a tiny rebellion? Modern self-care rituals look tame in comparison. A scented candle, a bath bomb, a soft playlist. But then you realize the essence is the same. People have always sought comfort in secrecy, in small indulgences, in tiny acts of rebellion against their world's rigid rules. You laugh quietly at the absurdity, imagining a Victorian spa night with corsets and chamber pots, and feel a warm sense of connection to the human need for privacy and solace across centuries. Sometimes the night air carries more than whispers. You might hear a muffled quarrel, a heated discussion stifled by blankets and velvet drapes, arguments over inheritance, love, or the appropriate method of arranging the bed for health reasons. Today, you might scroll through forums debating parenting hacks or the correct way to fold fitted sheets. Then, like now, the arguments were passionate, yet quiet enough not to disturb the delicate veneer of respectability. And just as in our world, where online debates rage unseen, the Victorian bedroom housed countless conversations that, if discovered, would have shocked the daytime household into polite silence. And here's a lesser-known twist. Some families actually scheduled private hours after midnight, where servants were expected to vacate, and the family could indulge in music, reading, or even clandestine card games. It's the historical equivalent of sneaking an episode of your favorite show when everyone else is asleep. Except the stakes were reputations, not binge-watching guilt. You can almost see them, sitting with candles balanced on the mantel, cards clutched nervously, whispers punctuated by occasional laughter, all in the safety of darkness. The most fascinating moments, though, are the quiet ones. A young girl carefully tending to a tiny herbal remedy for a sibling's cough. A father tracing the lines of a newly gifted book in the dim light, each gesture filled with intent, secrecy, and care. These nocturnal actions, seemingly small, reflect the same human tendencies we recognize today: to protect, to explore, to find joy and comfort away from the eyes of society. You realize that while the bedroom seems like a private stage, it's also a mirror of human resilience, curiosity, and the eternal desire to connect and survive within the rules imposed upon you. So, as you listen, standing in the shadows of heavy curtains, you understand the lesson these whispers carry. Life, in all its quiet dramas, is fleeting and delicate. The secrets and scandals of the night remind you to appreciate your own routines, your freedoms, and the little acts of joy you take for granted today. Just as Victorians hid their truths behind lace and mahogany, you can pause, savor, and embrace the simple comfort of being awake, alive, and unburdened by unnecessary pretense. And finally, the night hums softly around you. Every creak, every shuffle, every hushed whisper reminds you that life has always thrived in private, unseen moments. You smile at the continuity, the shared humanity, and for a brief moment, you feel gratitude for the calm and control your own bedroom offers. Even as you imagine those shadowed rooms from the past, alive with secret lives, laughter, and mischief, the bedroom feels alive in a different way now. You notice the furniture, not just as objects, but as silent storytellers of status, ambition, and pride. The bed, carved with intricate motifs that make you wonder how anyone slept without feeling like a medieval sculpture, isn't just a place for rest. It's a display of wealth, taste, and an unspoken competition with every neighbor on the street. You can almost hear the subtle sighs of visitors muttering, "Oh, how perfectly arranged," as if admiration for craftsmanship could somehow substitute for comfort. Today, we might buy an overpriced designer sofa, complaining if the cushion isn't soft enough. Back then, the emphasis wasn't soft, it was seen, and sometimes the harder the surface, the more it impressed. The chairs lining the walls look inviting in theory, but their high backs and stiff legs betray a more rigid purpose. They were not meant for lounging with a cup of tea and a cozy blanket like we do now. They were there to communicate dignity, to keep posture as a silent declaration of self-discipline. Imagine sitting on one today and wincing, realizing that centuries ago, people endured these forms for appearances alone, because showing comfort was a luxury reserved for the lower classes or a scandal waiting to happen. And just as we debate the ergonomics of modern office chairs, historians still argue whether these Victorian designs prioritized aesthetics over health or if they were an intentional method of social control, subtly shaping behavior under the guise of decoration. The wardrobes gleam with polished surfaces, brass fittings reflecting candlelight. At first glance, they seem merely functional, storing clothes and linens. But a closer look reveals that each was crafted to display wealth. The more ornate, the more admiration and envy it invited. Some even had secret compartments for letters, jewelry, or small flasks of spirits. This dual-function utility, disguised as luxury, makes you smile. Because today, people hide snacks in their cabinets, hoping no one judges their midnight cravings. Then again, perhaps not much has changed after all. Humans have always used objects to communicate, conceal, and protect. Whether it's a carved wardrobe or a cleverly labeled Tupperware container. And then there's the matter of the tables and vanities. Every surface is perfectly positioned for visibility, for the chance that someone may glance and silently rank the household. But did you know that many vanity mirrors were slightly convex or angled to exaggerate elegance, making the sitter appear more graceful than in reality? Modern selfies come to mind. You might swipe, filter, angle, and post, hoping to convey the right image, yet somehow, Victorians were doing the same without even needing a smartphone. The difference? No comment section to deal with, just whispered admiration or critique in polite company. You drift toward the shelves, noting that even the books are arranged with purpose. Leather bindings, gilt edges, exotic titles that suggest intellect and taste. But did the inhabitants ever read them? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Some were purely decorative, chosen for their spine color or prestige. Just like today, when someone buys a statement coffee table book, they'll never touch. Historians debate how often reading in these bedrooms happened versus simply collecting status symbols. You chuckle quietly, realizing that the tension between function and showmanship isn't a new phenomenon, it's a timeless human quirk. The carpets are thick, patterned, and designed to impress, though comfort was a secondary thought. You step lightly, sensing the underlying stiffness that makes lounging impossible without a chair or pillow. In contrast, your modern plush rug at home encourages sprawling, lounging, even spilling a cup of tea without a care. Victorians had their priorities straight: elegance over ease, image over indulgence. And yet, despite the stiffness, these rooms have a warmth born of attention, ritual, and care, showing that even in a society obsessed with appearances, there was a subtle appreciation for beauty and order. Curtains, drapes, and canopies demand attention next. They are heavy, layered, and perfectly color-coordinated, creating a theatrical effect that frames the bed like a stage. But here's the twist. Many were designed to protect privacy while simultaneously broadcasting taste. A visitor could peek into a room and immediately judge the household's refinement, while those inside could shield their personal routines. Today, we might fuss over blackout curtains or Instagram lighting, yet the psychological dance of concealing while displaying remains remarkably similar. Even the weight of the fabric serves a purpose: muffling sounds, hiding movements, controlling light's subtle power plays disguised as decoration, and the lighting itself tells a story. Candles, gas lamps, and early electric fixtures were positioned not just to illuminate, but to enhance the drama of the room. Shadows played across walls, creating a sense of depth and mystery, highlighting the most impressive furniture and decor while hiding less desirable elements. You might liken it to modern cinematic lighting, Instagram aesthetics, or even theater stage design. The goal: manipulate perception, intrigue observers, and maintain control over the narrative of one's home. Even small details, drawer pulls, the placement of decorative objects follow a silent code. Each choice communicates discernment, status, and alignment with social expectations. Yet hidden within these meticulous arrangements, there were subtle rebellions: a slightly askew vase, a discreet flask, a journal tucked behind a stack of papers. These minor deviations, unnoticed by casual visitors, hint at the private life simmering beneath the performative surface. And isn't that a reminder for us today? Even when life looks perfect on social media, the real stories, the quirks, the humanity, often exist just out of sight. So as you wander through this room, noticing the intricate woodwork, the gleaming surfaces, and the carefully curated clutter, you begin to understand a delicate truth. Furniture and decor may serve a public role, signaling respectability and status. But behind every object lies a human story of compromise, desire, rebellion, and care. The comfort sacrificed, the effort invested, the secrets tucked behind every panel, mirror, and drawer. All of it speaks to a rhythm of life that values appearance and perception, yet cannot entirely suppress individuality and humanity. And finally, you pause and inhale the room's scent, a blend of polished wood, wax, perfume, and faint dust. It's oddly comforting. You realize that while Victorians obsessively curated appearances, their rooms remind us to appreciate the simplicity of comfort today. The freedom to sit on a soft chair, stretch on a plush carpet, or spill tea without worrying about judgment. These bedrooms, so obsessed with image, teach you a subtle lesson: treasure the small, effortless comforts of your own space, because they are gifts you might take for granted until you imagine a life without them. The night hums softly, and you can feel the tension between spectacle and solace, public and private, tradition and desire. Each polished surface, stiff chair, and heavy drape carries the weight of history, but also a quiet message. The human need for expression, privacy, and care transcends time. And as you step away from this room, leaving behind the carefully staged elegance, you carry with you a gentle reminder to savor the little comforts of the present, laugh at the absurdities of the past, and notice the stories that quietly unfold around you, in both grand design and small, intimate corners, the heavy curtains of the Victorian bedroom close behind you, and suddenly the room feels smaller, charged with attention you can almost touch. Behind these walls, love and restraint wove together in ways that might make a modern romantic comedy look tame. The air carries faint scents of perfume and candle smoke, mingled with something harder to define, a whisper of secrets, unspoken desires, and the quiet weight of expectation. It's in this stillness that the true life of the bedroom emerges, not just as a place to sleep, but as a theater for the heart, mind, and society's unyielding rules. You notice the bed again, grand and imposing, canopy heavy with velvet that muffles sound. In its shadow, passion could bloom or falter depending on social standing, moral constraint, or simply who was watching or thinking they might be. Today, intimacy can be shared freely or discreetly, behind the privacy of a text or a dimly lit room. Back then, every glance, every whispered word, every slight brush of the hand carried a weight amplified by the gaze of the invisible social jury. A note left on a pillow could be scandalous, a hand held in the dark revolutionary, and a smile across a tea tray charged with unspoken tension. Historians still debate how much of Victorian romance was genuine desire and how much was carefully performed propriety. Either way, you can almost hear the sighs, the restrained laughter, and the nervous pacing echoing off the walls. The faint glow of gaslight highlights the intricate embroidery on the bedspread, and it's hard not to imagine the lovers or companions who might have pressed against it, quietly navigating desire and decorum. Some women, for example, were rumored to secretly remove certain layers of clothing under the guise of nighttime heat or illness, allowing a brief moment of autonomy and pleasure without attracting censure. Modern readers might giggle, thinking of clever loopholes like using headphones to hide Netflix binges from roommates. But in that time, the stakes were higher. The consequences of discovery were reputational, social, even financial. And yet the ingenuity, the subtle rebellion, and the human yearning shine through, reminding you that the play between restriction and desire is universal and timeless. Across the room, a dressing table is laden with powders, creams, and combs. These objects were not simply for beauty, they were instruments in a subtle dance of attraction and presentation. A carefully applied rouge might signal health and vitality, or perhaps a hidden message to a lover, a code wrapped in color. You might compare it to today's carefully curated social media posts, the angle of a selfie, the filter applied, the caption crafted to send a subtle signal. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And, intriguingly, some of these powders contained dangerous ingredients, arsenic, lead, or other substances, showing that the line between allure and harm was literally skin deep. You hear a faint shuffle from the corner, and you imagine a servant, perhaps a confidant or an intermediary in these private affairs. moving silently with the night's tasks. Often, servants were more than mere observers. They became reluctant participants in the secret theatre of desire, carrying letters, refilling scented water, or even delivering messages between clandestine lovers. Today, we might think of them as innocent background characters, but their position gave them a unique, sometimes unnerving insight into the lives of those above stairs. And while we debate whether such complicity was voluntary or coerced, the subtle power dynamics of trust, discretion, and secrecy ripple through the story. And then there are the letters themselves, tucked behind the fireplace, under cushions, or inside books. Many contained the confessions of hearts restrained by circumstance or society. One might wonder how often these notes were read and reread, imagined and fantasized over, while sitting in the same room as the objects that would witness their shame or delight. Modern romance apps might seem scandalous to the Victorian mind, yet the impulse to communicate desire secretly, to explore forbidden emotions, to create intimacy beyond the public eye remains unchanged. You notice the mirrors positioned across the room, reflecting light and creating the illusion of space, but also offering glimpses of the inhabitants themselves. Some mirrors were angled intentionally to allow a lady or gentleman to check posture, complexion, and demeanor while maintaining discretion. These mirrors, like silent advisors, reminded the Victorian resident of the ever-present gaze of society. Today, we rely on cameras, screens, and notifications to monitor our appearance, our image, and, in a way, our social approval. Then, as now, self-awareness and the desire to project an acceptable persona were inescapable. But the tension between private desire and public expectation remains palpable. A subtle aroma of sandalwood or bergamot drifts across the room, reminding you that scent, like decor, was an instrument of communication. Perfumes signaled not only hygiene but social intent, sometimes hinting at a rendezvous or a message intended for the right or wrong ears. It's funny, isn't it? Today we spritz a cologne or perfume without a second thought. Yet back then, a carefully chosen scent could whisper a scandal, declare allegiance, or provoke curiosity. Each gesture, each fragrance, each flicker of candlelight was loaded with meaning, hidden behind the polite veneer of Victorian civility. And yet, amid this dance of secrecy and longing, you catch glimpses of everyday humanity. Couples arguing quietly over trivial matters, lovers holding hands beneath layers of fabric, individuals finding solace in a small moment of privacy. These threads of ordinary life were sewn together with the extraordinary tension of societal rules. The juxtaposition of restraint and yearning, of duty and desire, of public morality and private inclination, paints a picture that is both dramatic and achingly familiar. Finally, as you stand in the dim glow, the room seems to exhale around you, carrying the echoes of whispers, soft laughter, and unspoken confessions. You realize that these shadows of desire are not merely historical curiosities, they are reminders of what it means to be human. To crave, to restrain, to navigate social expectations while cherishing small freedoms. They invite you to reflect on the simple pleasures you can enjoy today without fear or consequence. A gentle touch, an honest smile, a moment of unguarded intimacy. The Victorian bedroom, so charged with secrecy and subtle rebellion, teaches a quiet lesson: to cherish presence, honesty, and the freedom to express what matters to you. And as you slowly move away from the bed, letting the velvet curtains fall back into stillness, you carry with you the awareness that desire, discretion and human complexity have always coexisted, and that the subtle dances, whispered confessions, and tender acts of connection are the very essence of life across centuries. It's a lesson in gratitude, a call to notice and savor the ordinary yet extraordinary freedoms of today, and a reminder that even in the most disciplined or constrained times, hearts and minds still seek warmth, connection, and meaning. As you sink into the dim corners of the bedroom, the atmosphere shifts, almost imperceptibly, from desire to caution. The air seems heavier, tinged with the scent of herbs, vinegar, and faintly burnt wicks. Here, the bedroom is no longer just a sanctuary of love or display. It transforms into a stage where the invisible actors of disease, fear, and cure perform their quiet drama. You can almost hear the hushed conversations. Take this tincture, wrap him warmly. Don't let the fever touch your skin. It's like a theater of anxiety, a nightly rehearsal for ailments both real and imagined. And yes, you'd probably wince at the remedies, tonic potions, leeches, or poultices that might have made a modern first aid kit blush. The bed, once a symbol of elegance and clandestine rendezvous, now doubles as a hospital cot. Thick quilts are folded around the sick, their weight both comforting and suffocating. A tray of medicines sits precariously nearby. Copper spoons, glass bottles, and jars of herbs that promise salvation, though often the cure is as mysterious as the illness itself. Modern medicine might seem miraculous in comparison, yet the impulse to care, to soothe, and to protect has not changed. You might think of a warm cup of tea or a box of tissues today, but then the stakes were higher. Even a mild fever could spiral into something far more sinister. And everyone in the household was acutely aware of mortality lurking in shadows. You notice the subtle rituals surrounding care. A worried parent adjusts blankets, a spouse fetches a damp cloth for the fevered brow, and someone, perhaps a discreet servant, sprays scented water to mask the faint odor of sickness. There's an odd mixture of tenderness and social performance here. Today, we might share a gif of sympathy or quietly sanitize a countertop, yet the desire to comfort remains constant. What's different is the immediacy and intensity of it. In Victorian times, the bedroom could mean life or death, and every whispered instruction carried weight. Historians still debate how effective some treatments truly were. Were poultices magical remedies or placebo theater? Was the obsessive cleaning of bedding a genuine precaution or a ritual of control? Perhaps it was both, simultaneously. And then there are the lesser-known practices that make you raise an eyebrow. Some rooms were equipped with sick corners, designated areas where the afflicted could be isolated yet still observed. A carefully propped pillow, a small folding screen, or even a chair angled just so would ensure both comfort and supervision. It's strangely reminiscent of our modern quarantine measures, though thankfully without the heavy layers of lace, cumbersome gowns, and candlelit anxiety. The Victorian obsession with separating disease from the rest of daily life, while practical in some cases, also amplified the psychological weight of illness, making fear as much a fixture as the bed itself. Candles flicker across walls lined with delicate wallpaper, hiding spots for insects, dust, and perhaps even bacteria. Though no one quite understood the mechanism, you might smirk at the irony. So much care taken to maintain appearances and health, yet hidden dangers lurked silently. Today, we have sterilized linens, antibacterial sprays, and temperature control. Then, prevention relied on ritual, habit, and observation. And just like now, the line between true science and guesswork was often blurred. Some remedies that seem bizarre to us, like vinegar baths or mustard plasters, were common. Yet they demonstrate a keen awareness of hygiene and symptom management. Even if wrapped in superstition, you hear soft footsteps and whispered advice, echoing across floorboards that have borne witness to countless ailments. Servants, nurses, and family alike moved quietly, minimizing disturbance but maximizing attention. It's fascinating how, amid fear, people found structure, order, and even a rhythm of care. Compare it to our own homes during a cold or flu. A parent hovering with chicken soup, a sibling delivering tissues, everyone tiptoeing, adjusting lights, managing noise. The gestures haven't changed, only the implements and context. The same human impulse to shield, to nurture, to manage unseen threats persists across centuries. There's also the strange practice of monitoring vital signs through touch and observation alone. A hand on the wrist, a check of the pulse in candlelight, noting color changes, subtle shifts in breathing. Modern thermometers and monitors make it easier, but the tension, the vigilance, and the constant calculation were the same. You can almost sense the silent debates. Should the patient be left to rest or roused for treatment? Should the room be ventilated or kept warm? Some households were meticulous. Others relied on superstition or guesswork. Historians still argue how much of Victorian care was genuinely therapeutic versus ritualistic. Yet the underlying human desire to intervene and protect is unmistakable. Even the decor participates in the theater of health. Heavy curtains might be drawn not just for privacy, but to maintain warmth. Rugs and carpets insulate, but they also trap dust. Canopies can protect the sick from drafts, but inadvertently harbor unseen germs. You might chuckle thinking of how modern interior designers obsess over feng shui, air purifiers, and color palettes. The Victorian approach combined aesthetics, comfort, and practical health measures, with some accidental wisdom sprinkled among the more eccentric practices and in quiet corners. You sometimes glimpse small remedies, sachets of herbs tucked into the bedclothes, bottles of lavender water to soothe nerves, and handwritten notes detailing symptoms, treatments, or advice. The act of recording, monitoring, and planning care shows an astonishing level of attentiveness. Today, we might track symptoms with apps or digital calendars, yet the motivation remains the same: to protect those we love, to manage uncertainty, and to assert a sense of control in an unpredictable world. Finally, as you step back from the sick bed, the candlelight softens, and the room exhales its tensions. You feel the mix of anxiety, tenderness, and ritual that made the Victorian bedroom a space of both fear and solace. It's a reminder of how fragile life once was, how quickly disease could intrude, and how carefully people navigated the boundaries between care, superstition, and control. And, perhaps most importantly, it is a lesson in gratitude. Today, you enjoy comforts, knowledge, and medical safety that were unimaginable then. A warm blanket, access to medicine, clean linens, and the reassurance of modern science, all of it is a gift. The Victorian bedroom teaches that while fear and care are timeless, so too is the joy of simply being able to rest safely, to love, and to live without the constant shadow of deadly uncertainty. As you leave this stage of whispered fears and nightly cures, the soft glow of the room reminds you to cherish your own routines, to appreciate the little gestures of care, and to honor the comforts that make life possible today. You carry with you a sense of empathy, reflection, and a renewed awareness that every mundane act of wellness now was once a matter of survival, performance, and whispered hope. You shift your attention from the bed and the whispers of illness to the quieter, almost invisible presence that gives the room life. The servants. They move with a rhythm you almost miss, gliding across polished floorboards, adjusting pillows, sweeping dust, or quietly replenishing candles without ever drawing notice. It's easy to forget, in a world where the bedroom appears serene and luxurious, that much of this comfort rests on hidden labor, on hands that never pause for acknowledgement. You might think of modern housekeeping services or cleaning apps, but then, the human effort was relentless, tireless, and socially invisible. Every evening, the same rituals replayed: scrubbing floors, washing linens, polishing mirrors until reflections gleamed, and arranging the room so that it seemed effortlessly elegant. And yet, no one would thank them for this invisible choreography. Today, leaving a kitchen counter spotless earns a quick thanks or a social media like. In the Victorian bedroom, perfection was the expectation, and a misaligned cushion might go unnoticed or worse, silently judged. Historians still debate whether such rigorous standards were primarily about aesthetics, hygiene, or social control. But the effect was clear. The servant's work was both essential and largely unacknowledged. A shadow performance, supporting every display of wealth and propriety. You notice the dual nature of the tasks. Physical labor was only part of it. Emotional labor mattered just as much. Servants memorized schedules, anticipated desires, and navigated the unspoken tensions between masters and guests. A dropped teacup could signal negligence. A misplaced note could trigger gossip. Some even acted as silent intermediaries for private affairs, discreetly conveying messages between the bedroom and the rest of the household. You can almost imagine it today. We might text a friend about a secret, but then a servant performed the same role with discretion, intuition, and a keen understanding of the stakes involved. And then there were the hidden health hazards. Servants were constantly exposed to dust, candle soot, and lingering pathogens from the sick rooms you just left. They washed, scrubbed, and ventilated, often without adequate protection. Some carried knowledge of remedies and potions, but rarely received the same care afforded to the family they served. Modern protective gloves, masks, and cleaners make us sigh in relief, imagining that we might have survived such work. Yet the human instinct to serve, anticipate, and care for others, no matter the risk, remains the same. Interestingly, servants sometimes became archivists of secrets, silent keepers of knowledge. They overheard conversations, glimpsed hidden letters, and witnessed intimate moments. You might compare this to modern online history. Servers and algorithms quietly store our data, unseen, while we live our lives unaware. Yet the servants were flesh and blood, fully present, navigating a delicate line between duty, discretion, and their own moral judgment. Some were loyal, some curious, some opportunistic. The bedroom's elegance depended not only on material objects, but on these human threads, weaving discretion, labor, and observation into an invisible web. You step closer to the washstand, noticing how small tasks could carry immense weight. A servant pouring scented water, folding a handkerchief with precision, or arranging a tray of medicines might think nothing of it. Yet these gestures sustained the household's dignity, comfort, and sometimes even safety. It's amusing to imagine a modern apartment relying on such invisible care. No Roombas could substitute for intuition, empathy, or foresight. The Victorian household demanded more than muscle. It demanded anticipation, subtlety, and emotional intelligence. The bedroom's polished surfaces and neatly made bed might suggest effortless serenity, but every object reflects hours of labor. Curtains meticulously adjusted, carpets vacuumed with brushes that now seem medieval, linens starched and folded with almost obsessive precision. All of it masks the human effort behind the scenes. The servant's work was never about recognition. It was about sustaining appearances and protecting the household from embarrassment or illness. And yet, in their silence, you sense a quiet dignity, a mastery of craft and social navigation that is remarkable in its own right. Even the timing of tasks was critical. Candles had to be lit just so, floors swept before guests arrived, beds aired and fluffed for comfort, and small comforts arranged for privacy and aesthetic effect. One misstep could disrupt the delicate balance of order, creating discomfort for masters or even a ripple of social embarrassment. Today, we might panic over a messy Zoom background, but in those bedrooms, perfection was a constant expectation, and the servants bore the full responsibility for maintaining it. And hidden within the routine, there were small acts of rebellion or ingenuity. A servant might leave an extra candle for comfort, sneak a bit of treat to a favored master, or arrange objects in a subtly humorous pattern when no one was watching. These tiny deviations, unnoticed by the occupants, allowed the servant a private expression, a momentary control in a world defined by expectation and subservience. You can think of it as the Victorian equivalent of leaving a sticky note joke on a co-worker's desk, quietly human, ingeniously subtle. Finally, you pause at the threshold, realizing that the elegance, privacy, and even the whispered secrets you have been tracing through the bedroom are inseparable from the silent labor that underpins them. The servant's burden reminds you that comfort and beauty are often invisible achievements, and that every polished surface, carefully tucked sheet, or discreetly handled letter relies on human effort, thought, and discretion. It's a gentle lesson for today. Appreciate those who sustain your environment, those who support your routines, and the hidden work that allows life to appear effortless. And as you step away from this room, leaving the silent custodians to continue their unseen choreography, you carry with you a newfound respect for the ordinary yet extraordinary acts of care that surround you every day. The Victorian bedroom, with all its elegance, secrecy, and ritual, teaches you to notice and honor the hidden hands, the quiet diligence, and the unseen hearts that make life smoother, safer, and richer than it might appear at first glance. In reflecting on their silent burden, you might also reflect on your own small contributions and the everyday kindnesses that often go unnoticed, realizing that appreciation, mindfulness, and gratitude are timeless human treasures. As the door clicks softly behind you, the bedroom transforms again, this time into a sanctuary of secrecy and control. Locks, folding screens, and heavy curtains dominate the space, signaling that privacy has become not just a desire, but an obsession. Every latch and drape is a declaration. Some things are meant to remain unseen, conversations unheard, and thoughts unshared. You can almost hear the faint rustle of fabric and the metallic whisper of keys turning. Reminders that even within the elegance of the Victorian home, boundaries were fiercely defended. It's fascinating, isn't it, to consider that a simple lock could wield power and discretion in ways our modern password-protected devices only hint at. Curtains, thick and velvet draped, do more than keep out drafts. They shield intimate moments from eyes and judgment. You notice how some rooms employ double layers, sheer for daylight privacy, heavy for the cloak of night. In an age before electric lights, the play of candle glow against folds of fabric was both functional and dramatic. Today, we swipe a phone screen or close blinds to achieve a similar sense of privacy. But there's a humor in imagining that the Victorian equivalent involved complex drapery choreography and careful footwork to avoid rustling and giving away your presence. Folding screens offer another fascinating layer. Often ornately carved or embroidered, they divided spaces within a room, creating pockets of concealment. A dressing area, a secret rendezvous spot, or even a small corner to nurse illness all could be shielded from view. You might think of them as the era's version of a pop-up video call background, hiding parts of reality that society deemed inconvenient or embarrassing. Interestingly, some screens were decorated with subtle motifs hinting at stories, scandals, or family pride, acquired visual language that only the discerning eye might decode. Historians still debate how much of this was purely aesthetic and how much served as coded communication, yet it's clear that screens were more than decoration. They were instruments of discretion and subtle influence. Locks, too, deserve attention. A brass key turning in a polished lock could mark the difference between freedom and constraint, privacy and exposure. Bedrooms began to sport more sophisticated locking mechanisms, signaling a desire to control who could witness or interrupt personal affairs. It's amusing to compare this to our modern habits. Digital passwords, biometric locks, VPNs. The desire to control access hasn't changed. Only the technology has evolved. And yet, while a forgotten password might provoke mild irritation today, a misplaced key in a Victorian bedroom could trigger gossip, anxiety, or even social embarrassment. You notice how these inventions intersect with human behavior. Curtains can be pushed aside too early, screens accidentally reveal a movement, and locks sometimes fail. Each mishap creates tension, whispered apologies, and small dramas that ripple through the household. Today, we might leave our laptop camera on by accident, or post a story prematurely, resulting in minor embarrassment. The Victorian equivalent involved far more decorum and far less social media forgiveness. In both cases, though, the tension between public and private life is tangible and enduring. Some rooms reveal even stranger innovations. Bed canopies equipped with internal drapery allowed sleepers to cocoon themselves completely, filtering light, noise, and even drafts. Occasionally, tiny pouches of herbs were sewn into the folds to repel insects or add subtle scents, blending comfort with practicality. You might smile thinking of a modern air purifier or white noise machine achieving similar results, yet lacking the delicate craftsmanship and multisensory layering that made privacy both a practical and aesthetic pursuit. And the servants, their presence or absence intersects with these inventions of privacy. A discreet knock, a carefully timed entry, and the rustle of a gown signaled that respect for these boundaries was expected and often enforced. The line between help and intrusion was narrow, and navigating it required sensitivity, experience, and sometimes clever improvisation. Modern household staff, security systems, or smart home alerts echo these concerns, though perhaps with less elegance and more beeping. Yet the principle remains. Privacy is a negotiated space, delicate and socially mediated. There's also a layer of social signaling embedded in these inventions. Heavy curtains, locked doors, and ornate screens signal wealth, status, and refinement. A bedroom without such devices might invite scrutiny, imply modest means, or suggest a lack of decorum. In modern terms, it's like a home with no Wi-Fi or sparse decor, signaling either frugality or eccentricity. It's noticed, and it communicates quietly but effectively. The Victorian obsession with privacy was not purely personal. It was social, a way to assert control over one's environment and one's reputation simultaneously. And yet, among all this precaution, there's a humor in the extremes. Curtains so heavy that entering the room required effort, locks that needed multiple twists to function, and screens that occasionally toppled. These quirks remind you that obsession often borders on absurdity. Today, a poorly designed smart lock might frustrate us, but at least we can reset it with a tap. Then, a misaligned screen could result in a whispered scandal or a comedic scramble to maintain appearances. The tension between utility and performance, between necessity and theatricality, is timeless. Finally, as you step back and survey the room, the lesson emerges, subtly yet clearly. The Victorian inventions of privacy locks, screens, curtains, and even hidden pouches, an enduring human desire to protect what is personal, intimate, and precious. Yet, in pursuing these protections, we also gain insight into vulnerability, social expectation, and the human need to manage how we are seen. Today, you enjoy freedoms, technologies, and spaces that allow privacy without the constant anxiety of misstep or observation. Appreciating these gifts, the room whispers is as much a part of modern life as the locks themselves. And as the light softens and the echoes of rustling fabric fade, you carry forward an understanding of balance. Privacy, security, and comfort are valuable, yet their pursuit should not obscure life's simple joys. The careful choreography of curtains and locks in the Victorian bedroom invites reflection on discretion, on human ingenuity, and on the freedoms we often take for granted. In this interplay of concealment and revelation, you find a gentle nudge to cherish your own space, the quiet of a room that belongs fully to you, and the ordinary luxuries of peace, safety, and self-expression that the past can only hint at, yet which we now enjoy freely as the bedroom settles into darkness. The air seems to thicken, carrying whispers of dreams, omens, and unseen presences. The flicker of candlelight has faded, leaving shadows that play along the walls like silent actors in a theater of the subconscious. You lie back and realize that sleep in the Victorian era was never merely rest, it was an encounter with the strange, the mysterious, and sometimes the terrifying. Unlike today, where a white noise machine or blackout curtains lull us gently, Victorians layered beliefs, rituals, and precautions around the very act of closing one's eyes. Some households placed protective charms beneath pillows or along the bedposts, tiny talismans designed to ward off nightmares, spirits, or ill fortune. You might smirk at the thought today. We double-check the locks and scroll through calming playlists, but then consider the intensity of their belief. A well-placed charm was not decoration. It was an insurance policy against unseen threats, a small comfort in a world where imagination and superstition intertwined seamlessly. Historians still debate how much these practices were genuinely spiritual versus socially performative, yet their persistence across homes is undeniable. The very architecture of the bedroom influenced sleep. Canopies, drapes, and screens served not only to ensure privacy, but also to shield sleepers from harmful drafts, thought to carry spirits or illness. Some beds were angled in particular ways, aligning with folklore about airflow, moonlight, and the position of spirits. Today, we fuss over ergonomic mattresses and pillow firmness, yet the Victorian attention to unseen influences demonstrates a deep, if sometimes amusing, awareness of environmental impact on rest. One wonders how many sleepless nights were caused by worry over ghosts rather than uncomfortable. Bedding. Dreams themselves were treated with cautious respect. Dream journals were occasionally kept, small notebooks recording visions, nightmares, and fleeting images, believed to offer insight or warnings. You can almost imagine a servant tiptoeing past, careful not to disturb the sleeper, while noticing a hastily scribbled note about a shadowy figure or an ominous premonition. Modern sleep tracking apps accomplish something similar, yet lack the human sense of wonder or dread that accompanied every nocturnal experience back then. The juxtaposition is almost funny, from detailed supernatural logs to today's graphs of REM cycles. The obsession with understanding sleep remains remarkably consistent. Nightmares were particularly feared, prompting complex routines to mitigate them. Some families sprinkled salt along thresholds, others recited prayers or charms aloud, while a few even hung protective herbs above beds. Imagine the aroma of lavender, sage, or rosemary mingling with the lingering smell of candle smoke, creating a sensory environment designed to comfort and protect. Today, we might pop a melatonin or binge a light-hearted show before bed, laughing at the elaborate rituals of the past, but beneath the humor lies the same human desire to sleep safely, to feel secure, and to ward off the anxieties that lurk when consciousness fades. And then there were the visions of the unseen world. Some bedrooms were believed to be portals where the spiritual and material worlds intersected. Objects left on nightstands, mirrors angled just so, or even the placement of a bed relative to the door could influence dreams or encounters with spirits. You might picture a Victorian waking in the middle of the night, convinced that a shadow had moved, or that a whispered message from beyond was urgent. Today, we might rationalize such occurrences as trick-of-light illusions or sleep paralysis. But for them, every subtle sign demanded attention, consideration, and sometimes action. Servants played a quiet role here too, navigating the boundary between observation and interference. A candle might be relit for a faintly stirring sleeper, or a whispered reassurance given while keeping watch over a child or guest. Unlike our modern reliance on baby monitors or motion sensors, the Victorian approach depended on intuition, proximity, and understanding subtle cues. And yet, in both eras, the intention is the same: vigilance for those who sleep, ensuring safety without intrusion. The bedroom also acted as a stage for psychological exploration. Dreams were often interpreted, discussed, or feared as prophetic or revealing. A vision of water could symbolize change, an animal might portend misfortune, and recurring images demanded attention. Historians still debate how much dream interpretation reflected genuine belief versus social entertainment or moral instruction. But the result was a culture in which sleep was never a passive state. Every closing of the eyes held potential, mystery, and narrative. There's also a humorous contrast with modern anxieties. Imagine fretting over a spectral presence when your greatest fear today might be missing an alarm or leaving your phone unattended. Yet the underlying pattern is strikingly similar. Humans create systems, rituals, alarms, charms, devices to exert control over the uncertainties of sleep. Then, as now, we seek comfort, predictability, and reassurance in spaces that are simultaneously intimate and vulnerable. Even the furnishings subtly influenced these beliefs. Bed curtains could be drawn not only for warmth and privacy, but to protect against drafts of ill fortune. Pillows might be plumped in particular ways, or quilts layered for security and symbolic protection. You can almost hear the whispered exchanges. Be careful. Don't let your dreams wander near the window. The herbs must remain in place, or the spirits will linger. Today, we might chuckle at these precautions, yet they reflect a profound human impulse to shape our inner worlds and safeguard the fragile boundary between waking and sleeping. Finally, as the night deepens, you sense the bedroom as a liminal space, part refuge, part theater, part portal. Dreams and nightmares blend with superstition, observation, and quiet care, creating a rich tapestry of experience. The Victorian fascination with sleep, visions, and the unseen world offers a gentle lesson for the present. Appreciate the ordinary act of resting, the safety of a familiar space, and the simple miracle of consciousness uninterrupted. While ghosts may no longer hover and charms may gather dust, the desire for comfort, security, and the small rituals that prepare us for sleep remain timeless. And so, as you settle into your own bed tonight, the whispers of past dreams remind you to value rest, to reflect on the unseen layers of care and protection around you, and to savor the serenity that comes with a world where sleep is safe, restorative, and uncomplicated. The Victorian bedroom, with its careful attention to the unseen and its elaborate rituals, invites you to notice the small privileges you enjoy today: freedom from superstition, control over your environment, and the simple luxury of sleeping without fear. It's a gentle nudge to be present, to be grateful, and to find wonder in the quiet, invisible workings of your own nightly sanctuary. As you lean back in the dim candlelight, the bedroom transforms yet again, this time into a quiet conduit of rumor, subtle intrigue, and whispered connections. Behind the carefully arranged curtains and behind the privacy afforded by locks and screens, stories travel like invisible threads, connecting the intimate boudoirs to the grand parlors of high society. A dropped word, a misdirected glance, or the careful placement of a letter can ripple outward, shifting reputations and alliances in ways almost invisible, yet profoundly impactful. You can almost hear the gentle rustle of silk as secrets slip from pillow to ear, eventually reaching ears far beyond the room itself. In these bedrooms, gossip is less an idle pastime than a carefully orchestrated social currency. A comment about a servant, a neighbor, or a guest can be whispered to just the right person, ensuring the information spreads, but not too widely. You might compare it to our modern social media feeds, where a post, comment, or photo can travel instantly around the world, but here, the pace is slower, more deliberate, and every messenger must balance discretion with ambition. Historians still debate how much of the rapid circulation of information was spontaneous chatter versus carefully engineered influence. Yet the effect was clear. Bedrooms were as much theaters of social negotiation as spaces for sleep. Some of the most compelling stories originate in moments of vulnerability. A lady adjusting her gown, a gentleman absent-mindedly recounting a dinner, or even a servant sharing a fleeting observation. These small interactions often carry disproportionate weight. The intimate setting encourages candidness, the perceived security of curtains and doors, tempting participants to speak freely. Today, we might laugh at the comparison. How often do we share details in the safety of private messaging apps, or the false privacy of a Zoom call, only for them to spread unexpectedly? The pattern remains the same. Humans find ways to communicate, intrigue, and influence, regardless of the technology. Boudoirs become stages for subtle performances. Sometimes, a woman might intentionally leave a letter or object in view. A small hint meant to be discovered by a favored observer, initiating a cascade of whispers. The act is clever and strategic, a mix of revelation and concealment, much like the modern leak of information online that generates curiosity and anticipation. The bedroom, with its combination of intimacy and invisibility, provides the perfect environment for these social experiments. You begin to see gossip as a form of currency, a delicate balance between power, influence, and risk. Even the decor plays a role. Mirrors reflect glimpses of movement or misaligned objects, prompting conversation and speculation. Footstools, cushions, and even strategically placed fans can hint at secrets, intentionally or by accident. You might smile, imagining today's version, a misplaced screenshot or a casually tagged photo creating waves of conversation. The human fascination with discovering what others hide hasn't changed. Only the tools and speed of transmission have evolved. Rumors themselves often possess layers of embellishment. A minor faux pas might grow into a tale of scandal, or a brief miscommunication become a story repeated at every dinner table in the neighborhood. Sometimes, these tales are entirely harmless. Other times, they shape reputations, alter opportunities, or dictate social interactions. The bedroom acts as a crucible for such narratives, private, insulated, and yet deeply connected to the wider web of society. Today, we might think of viral stories on social media, gossip columns, or office chatter. But the underlying mechanism, mix of observation, trust, and curiosity remains remarkably consistent across centuries. Servants, once again, play a quiet but critical role. They witness these whispers, carry subtle messages, and sometimes even participate in the careful choreography of information. A well-timed comment or a discreet nod can ensure that information travels efficiently and accurately around. In some cases, creatively misrepresented. You can almost imagine them as the Victorian version of moderators, influencers, or even algorithmic filters, managing the flow of stories with discretion and judgment. Even the content of the gossip is revealing. Romantic entanglements, financial missteps, social faux pas, or household dynamics all provide rich material. Some rumors offer moral lessons. Others are purely entertaining. Occasionally, a story carries strategic weight, subtly affecting alliances or social standing. You can picture the contrast to today. Instead of viral memes or celebrity scandals, these whispers shape tangible outcomes in everyday lives, influencing who was invited to a dinner, who was deemed trustworthy, and who became the subject of quiet judgment. Yet, amid the intrigue and drama, there is an enduring lesson. The bedroom's role as a conduit of gossip highlights the fragility and importance of human relationships. It's a reminder to be mindful of what we reveal, how we interpret what we hear, and how we participate in the stories that shape our communities. In the present day, where information travels faster than ever, this reflection is particularly poignant. Just as a careless word once traversed boudoirs to parlors, an unconsidered post can ripple across digital landscapes, reminding us to value discretion, empathy, and awareness. Finally, as the night deepens and the whispers settle into silence, you recognize the bedroom not only as a site of sleep and intimacy, but also as a subtle engine of influence and connection. Rumors, stories, and secret soul travel outward from these private spaces, shaping perceptions, relationships, and experiences. In reflecting on this, you find a gentle call to appreciate the freedom and control of your own environment, to observe the delicate balance between openness and discretion, and to cherish the trust, honesty, and calm that allow relationships to thrive. And as the candlelight fades and the room grows still, the echoes of whispered conversations remind you that while times and tools may change, the human desire to connect, understand, and share remains timeless. Tonight, in your own safe and quiet space, you can rest, knowing that your personal stories and private moments are yours to treasure, in contrast to the bustling, rumor-laden boudoirs of the past subtle, yet profound, luxury we often take for granted. The bedroom now feels different, heavier, more solemn, yet tender. It has witnessed laughter, secrets, and whispered desires, but tonight it carries the quiet weight of finality. In the Victorian imagination, bedrooms were not only stages for life's private dramas, but also spaces where farewells were tenderly offered, where the last moments of a life unfolded with ritual and reflection. You feel the stillness around you, as if the walls themselves hold memories of final sighs and whispered goodbyes. Beds, once playful or intimate, now transform into platforms for contemplation. Linens are meticulously arranged, cushions carefully fluffed, not for comfort alone, but as markers of dignity and respect. There is a choreography to the final sleep, the arrangement of objects, the positioning of curtains, the subtle placement of personal items, signaling that even in death, appearances mattered. Today, hospitals or hospices take on some of these functions, but the intimacy and ritual of the Victorian bedroom remain uniquer. Private theatre, where endings are observed with care. Family and attendants tread lightly, conscious of boundaries, yet deeply involved in care. You imagine the quiet footfalls, the whispered prayers, the small adjustments of blankets to ensure warmth. Sometimes a hand lingers gently on a shoulder. A whispered name breaks the silence, or a familiar object is placed just within reach. These gestures, delicate and precise, carry layers of emotion, forming an unspoken language of respect and comfort. In modern times, technology often mediates such care. Heart monitors, soft beeping devices, but the human touch, the deliberate attention to presence and reassurance, remains irreplaceable. The bedroom also becomes a repository for reflection. The dying might glance at family portraits, letters, or treasured mementos, drawing strength or peace from tangible connections. Objects once decorative assume symbolic weight. A clock ticking softly, a mirror reflecting a familiar face, a bedside table holding personal tokens, all communicate continuity, legacy, and remembrance. You sense that even as life wanes, the Victorian bedroom preserves dignity, ritual, and awareness of the self, a lesson that encourages modern observers to value time, presence, and the small comforts surrounding us every day. Historians still debate how much of these rituals were guided by genuine sentiment versus societal expectation, but the meticulous attention to details suggests that both played a role. Even in orchestrated farewells, love, care, and humanity were woven into each gesture. You can almost smile at the contrast with our modern rush, hurried goodbyes, digital condolences, or impersonal notifications. There's a richness in the slow, careful acknowledgement of finality, reminding you that the ordinary luxury of time, presence, and attention is worth cherishing. In these final moments, the bedroom also bears witness to practical preparations. Notes, letters, or instructions for inheritance, housekeeping, and family matters are discreetly placed. Curtains, locks, and screens continue their role, now offering privacy and dignity for the living and respect for the departing. Some families employed symbolic items, flowers, small charms, or personal objects to mark the transition, echoing centuries-old traditions and beliefs. You might imagine this as a form of silent storytelling, the bedroom preserving narrative threads that extend beyond life itself. And yet, amid solemnity, there is gentle humor. A favorite cat perched inconveniently on the bed, a stubborn curtain refusing to stay in place, or a sudden creak of floorboards. These little quirks remind observers that life's final moments are still intertwined with ordinary absurdities. Today, we might chuckle at a flat-screen TV left on or a pet curling into the wrong blanket. And in doing so, acknowledge that humor and imperfection accompany humanity to the very end. As night deepens, the room becomes a liminal space between life and memory, presence and absence. The bedside lamp, casting a soft glow, mirrors the flicker of consciousness itself, fragile yet persistent. Gentle breaths, quiet sighs, and subtle movements create a rhythm that is both soothing and poignant. You sense the bedroom holding its occupants in a careful embrace, offering protection, dignity, and the space for private contemplation. It is a silent lesson in respect, empathy, and the irreplaceable value of human care. And now, as the final 300 words approach, the rhythm slows. The room dims further, shadows blending seamlessly with night. Every sound softens. The gentle brush of fabric, the distant rustle of leaves outside, the subtle hum of a candle flickering. You imagine lying in the quietude, wrapped in familiar linens, the air carrying faint scents of lavender and wood polish, the walls whispering stories of lives lived fully and of farewells tenderly rendered. This is the lullaby of the Victorian bedroom, a soft, unhurried cadence that carries both memory and hope. Each breath, each heartbeat, echoes the intimacy of care, the permanence of affection, and the quiet joy of being present in these final, private moments. You feel yourself drift with the rhythm of history, cradled in a space that has witnessed everything from scandal to secrecy, desire to disease, whispers to farewells, and now the gentle close of life's chapters. The lesson emerges in this tranquility, to cherish each ordinary day, to value privacy, intimacy, and the small rituals that enrich life. The luxury of presence, care, and the ability to rest peacefully is something the modern world often overlooks. Yet the Victorian bedroom, in all its intricate layers, reminds you to honor it. Even in stillness, there is life. Even in farewell, there is connection. And as the night carries you softly toward your own rest, you carry with you an appreciation for these everyday gifts, simple, enduring, profound. End of script. Sweet dreams.